After looking at all these mishaps, a lot of people are very nervous. Do these cuts affect you?
The cuts do not affect us, Gail.
I'm going to go to Ghana, which I know you've said was a mistake now. But I just am curious on the thought process behind it.
Right.
Because we know that there was warnings about the weather before you went, and you still went.
I mean, this is, after all, the people that we elected to run the country, and they have to go into court and fight to run the country. I mean, it sounds crazy.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. A couple of clips to share with you guys today. Mayor Karen Bass just bombed an interview on Fox. The spin on this was unreal, pretty much claiming that she was the victim for being allowed to travel, saying that she wasn't aware of any of the warnings. Also have a clip of Gayle King getting shut down by Delta CEO Ed Bastian, and he just leaves her speechless. This is what happens when your narrative runs into reality. Let's have a look.
The Trump administration recently fired many employees of the FAA administration. Do those cuts worry you, and do you think that impacts the safety? I know you just said it's the safest way to travel, but after looking at all these mishaps, a lot of people are very nervous. Do these cuts affect you?
The cuts do not affect us, Gail. I've been in close communication with the Secretary of Transportation. I understand that the cuts at this time are something that are raising questions, but the reality is there's over 50,000 people that work at the FAA, and the cuts, I understand, were 300 people, and they were in non-critical safety functions. The Trump administration has committed to investing deeply in terms of improving the overall technologies that are used in the air traffic control systems and modernizing the skies. They've committed to hiring additional controllers and investigators and safety investigators. So no, I'm not concerned with that at all.
But Will, it goes to the point of, let's stop pointing fingers at each other and let's do the work now that should have been done 5, 10, 30 years ago. Let's do it today. So just recently, You mentioned Doge and all the attention that Elon Musk is getting. We want the best and brightest minds in America to come in and help us figure out how we fix the system. So where else do you go but SpaceX? We had some SpaceX engineers go to the FAA and just observe yesterday, Will. And they're going to craft proposals for us, a phased approach on how we might be able to fix the American system.
Before we get to Mayor Karen Bass's insanity of an interview, take a look at these polls from CNN. The lady's face on this segment says it all. The people have voted. They want the party of common sense. And these Democrats who are not leaving their narratives, who are not stopping with the gender ideology and the race baiting and making everything about race and gender, they're going to keep losing because America is done with the BS. Take a look at these polls.
Donald Trump and the Republican Party has changed the electorate. What do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look at party identification, Democrats versus Republicans. You go back to 2017, 5 points more of the electorate was Democrats than Republicans. You go to 2021 when Joe Biden was starting out, look at that. 6 points more of the electorate was Democrats than Republicans. But look at what's happened in February of 2025. Look at this. Republicans, there are more Republicans in the electorate than there are Democrats. Republican +2. So Donald Trump and the Republicans have remade the electorate. They've turned some people over from being Democrats or independents to become Republicans. New folks have entered the electorate who are more Republican leaning. And so when you combine that with the fact that Republicans are really, really behind Donald Trump, all of a sudden you get a winning recipe whereby you break the normal rules of politics and give Donald Trump that positive net approval rating when he had pretty much a consistently negative one in term number 1. As I said at the beginning, he's copying Frank Sinatra, doing it my way.
America is healing. We're getting back to a place of common sense. Now, let's have a quick look at Scott Jennings on CNN last night, talking about how amazing it is that Trump has to fight in court to be allowed to run the government that he was elected to run. Scott Jennings, followed by Karen Bass. Let's get it.
Well, first of all, it's a good decision. It's amazing to me that Donald Trump has to go to court to fight off attempts to keep the duly elected president and his appointees from having access to the federal government. I mean, this is, after all, the people that we elected to run the country, and they have to go into court and fight to run the country. I mean, it sounds crazy. So I think it was the only decision she could make, because it's patently ridiculous when Democrat attorneys general go to partisan judges, or any judges for that matter, and try to stop the duly elected government from operating. That's number one. Number two, this effort is nothing more than an attempt to control the federal bureaucracy and restore some political oversight to the federal government. That is all they are trying to do. So ultimately, I think people are happy with it, and I think they're finding some things that need to be uncovered. And the more that they're transparent about that, and the more they put that information out to the American people, the more popular it's going to become. How can you make any other decision than the one that she made? He's the president. These are his appointees going into the federal agencies that they were elected to run. So what does it matter what he said is a matter of a political statement before, as long as the result here is they get to run the federal government just like the people asked for?
To go to Ghana, which I know you've said was a mistake now. But I just am curious on the thought process behind it.
Right.
Because we know that there was warnings about the weather before you went, and you still went. What was the thought process behind going to Ghana?
So let me just tell you a couple of things. First of all, when the White House called and asked me if I would represent the president, I said yes. It was going to be a very, very short trip, over a weekend and 2 business days. We need to look at everything about the preparation and all of that for the fires, because I think when we evaluate that, we will find that although there were warnings that I frankly wasn't aware of, although there were warnings, I think our preparation wasn't what it typically is, meaning that before there's a major weather event, for example, last week when we knew we were going to get into the rains, you saw us come together and us talk about, you know, get your sandbags, bring the K-rails out. That type of preparation didn't happen. If that had, I will tell you, Alex, I wouldn't have even gone to San Diego, let alone leave the country.
But what do you mean there were warnings you weren't aware of? Because I know we were talking about it on the news. A lot of people were talking about the problems, warning that this was going to be a huge deal.
So when I talked about it with the fire chief, what she said is that we have warnings of Santa Ana winds a lot, but predicting this, and you saw, from the city, from the county, that level of preparation really didn't happen. So it didn't reach that level to me to say something terrible could happen and maybe you shouldn't have gone on the trip.
Why didn't it
But to
happen?
me, I don't know. I mean, I think that that's one of the things we need to look at. So 2 investigations are taking place. One internal to the city, and that's the Fire Commission, because that's mandated by the city charter. So the commission will hire an outside entity to examine everything, the pre-deployment, you know, why were firefighters sent home, you know, all of that should have taken place that didn't. And then also the governor has contracted with the Fire Safety Research Institute, which is a national institute that investigated what happened in the fires in Maui. So everything that happened, including that, needs to be examined. But I will tell you that I felt absolutely terrible not being here for my city and not being here for my family, who was impacted by the fires as well. And so when I say it was a mistake, absolutely, the idea that I was not present was very painful.
She actually said, I felt terrible not being there for the city. She's in Ghana most of the time. Here's the timeline. January 3rd, National Weather Service puts out a fire weather warning. January 4th, Mayor Bass leaves for Ghana like the day later. January 6th, particularly dangerous situation warning issued. January 7th, Palisades fire breaks out while Mayor Bass is celebrating inauguration of Ghana's new president. January 8th, Mayor Bass returns from Ghana. These are the facts. And also, Los Angeles has no business whatsoever in Ghana. She's the mayor of LA. Why was she going there in the first place? Unbelievable. I hope you enjoyed the video. Catch you on the next one. Peace out, everybody.